With the very first set of the Gundam card game out for quite a while, let's take a look at some of the best and topping decks for the GD01 format. Starting off with the very first deck that I want to talk about is the one that I'm personally playing a lot at the moment, and that is Unicorn Blockers, as well as known as Unicorn Tempo. The deck comes in the colors of both blue and white, with blue being the offensive strategy, which can rest down the opponent's units to play around blockers or attack into them for value trades. Whereas the white side of the deck is to have defensive blockers that can protect your base from enemy units as they attack into you or protect your own units from being attacked. One of the biggest combo power plays of this deck is to establish your Unicorn Destroy mode by destroying your own Unicorn mode, and then you can dish out 2 attacks in one single turn, which is insane. Otherwise, you can stagger your attacks and simply have a Destroy mode that stands on the board that your opponent's going to have to deal with as soon as you reach the level 5 curve. There are multiple applications to utilize Destroy mode. First, you can rest the opponent's blockers so that it can swing in successfully and easily into the shield or bases or trade into units, or otherwise you suspend any other random unit your opponent has on the side and then use a secondary unit that you have on your side of the board to try and take it down so that you can whittle down your opponent's resources quickly afterwards. But Naja being the main pilot of the deck, you mainly want to link it together with your Unicorn Gundam, whether it's Unicorn mode or Destroy mode, so that you can draw a card. And speaking of draw, since this deck is both blue and white after all, it has access to the 2 best draw staple cards in the game, which are Overflowing Affection and the Show of Resolve, to keep your hand size as healthy as possible. As a matter of fact, both these cards help you filter through your combo pieces quickly and consistently so that you can pull off your big level curve combo plays. As for the white blocker package, it mainly features the different variations of Strike Gundam and Kira Yamato as the main pilot. Other than blocking to protect yourself from the enemy attacks, you can also bounce the enemy units back to their hand. Some of you guys might be thinking that bouncing isn't as good as a removal tool at the moment, just because the opponent can always play that unit back out in the following turn. But what I learned over time is that tempo matters a lot, especially if you can prevent your opponent's unit from attacking one whole turn. And by doing so, it has allowed me to stay alive slightly longer in the game to get me some opportunities to make a comeback play afterwards. Overall, I think this deck is very strong and well balanced, offering a lot of versatilities when it comes to different matchups. So if you're looking for a mid-range tempo deck that can do it all, this is the perfect one that I would suggest. The next deck I want to talk about that is fairly similar is actually Freedom Blockers. Similar to Unicorn Blockers, but instead of playing a heavy Unicorn top-end package, you focus more on the Freedom Gundam instead. And that is to heavily emphasize on the control and blocking aspect when it comes to your game plan. With that being said, the deck plays even more blocker units, as the goal is to outgrind the opponents when it comes to the resource game. What that means is you want to take down your opponent's units and deplete the amount of cards they have left in their hand into very little or none left, and deal chip damage as much as you can in between to go for a safe and steady approach. Part of it is also building a large wall of blockers to interact during your opponent's turn as they try to attack into you. Here are some of the key noticeable differences when it comes to the deck list, as it plays a larger count of Freedom Gundams, which I mentioned before. It also plays a completely different base card, with Archangel being the main one, as it allows your blockers to restand after attacking once every turn. This is why it is one of the best cards in the deck, because it offers you both offensive and defensive strategies. You can also include the Gundam RX-78 with Amuro Ray package for further board control and some aggression as well, with additional AP across the board. And because this is also a blue and white deck after all, it just makes sense to include the staple command cards that give you draw power with Overflowing Affection and a Show of Resolve. I would say that this deck was fairly popular in the first few weeks of GD01 was released. But shortly after that, it didn't perform as well later on in the meta, and I think there are several reasons why. One could be because it needs way more aggression to close games faster, and games do tend to get quite grindy, and it takes quite a fair bit amount of time for it to finish. The other reason I think is because it hard loses to the Wing Zero matchup, as it inherently has high maneuver, negating all your blockers on the field, which is also a very popular deck at the moment. Switching gears to talk about some aggro-based decks, I want to start off talking about the Cyber Newtype deck. Featuring both Kshatriya and Unicorn Gundam O2 Banshee, which can be linked together with Merida Cruz from the Unicorn Gundam series, this is a red and blue based deck. We have seen this deck win multiple events in the early stages, including the first combat tournaments that were held at Gen Con. It plays an abundance of low level and low cost units to try to attack into your opponent's shield and bases as early as possible. It has a simple and offensive strategy to rush down your opponent's base in order to win by turn 6. It has many effects that can deal direct damage to your enemy units in order to destroy them, and then you can take advantage of the board instead of using your own units to trade into them. This is where linking Kshatriya with Merida comes in the mid-game stages to shoot down multiple enemy units at one go. It It also plays the Gundam Arc 78 package with Amuro together to rest the enemy units, and that is mainly to play around blockers or also further trade against stronger bodies whenever you need to. Banshee is the late game boss card that you want to see so that it can give you 2 instant attacks to either go for lethal or take down the enemy units multiple times with first strike. The deck is very straightforward and easy to learn, which is why it's one of the decks that I highly recommend for new players. Aside from blue-red, another aggro-based deck is Zeon Rush. Different to Cyber Newtype, which gives a bit more mid-range playstyle when it comes to paying off the enemy units, Zeon Rush purely focuses on full aggro, with most of the cards being green. The main engine features Char, which is the iconic villain that we're all familiar with from the original series, alongside with the Zaku units, which a lot of them have one cost to be played out in the early stages of the game. The goal is to swarm the board with as many of them as possible and keep attacking. Ideally, you want to link Char alongside with his Zaku 2 to give extra AP and high maneuver so they can play around blockers. And the nice thing is that both Char's Zaku 2s have on destroy effects, with one of them allowing you to search to grab another card so that can play out following, or otherwise spawn out a Zaku token to keep the board afloat with units. Gu, being the main unit boss card, can directly link Char back from the trash to give you an instant access to attack after Char was initially exhausted from linking from the Char Zaku 2s earlier. At the same time, I think that's a really cool mechanic because it's also very lore fitting. Other than green, the secondary color package is blue, which again plays the Gundam Arc 78 and Amuro package, which we talked about already for the same reasons explained before for aggressive game plans. But this time it also includes the G Fighter to give additional high maneuver to the white-based team trait units for game-winning attacks. Although the deck is blue, which you might be thinking it would be a good idea to include the command card A Show of Resolve for draw power, but actually you wouldn't want to play it at all. The key thing to think about is that when you build this deck is to have as many unit cards as possible, so that every card you draw is going to be a unit that you want to be played out, which is why you end up not needing the draw power anyways. Furthermore, the full focus is to try and win extremely quickly, especially if the opponent's not able to slow you down. But because the deck solely plays towards one single strategy, it does tend to run out of steam as it hard loses against any deck that is able to dish out heavy blockers in the early stages. But despite that, it still has put in results in topping several events, so if you guys are ever about that high roll, full-on aggression life, this deck will probably be for you. For the next one, this could arguably be one of the best deck of the format because it has seen top in many events and also won a lot of the recent ones too. And that is the Wing Zero deck, which features the colors of both green and white, where the green cards are mainly to include characters from the Wing Gundam series. The green side of the game plan is to ramp up additional resources to gain higher level curves than the opponent, and that is where you can start dropping larger and higher level bodies before anyone else. This is mainly achieved through Wing Gundam Bird mode to get the extra resource, and Death Scythe to gain a rested resource. You want to mainly link Hero and Wing Gundam together from the starter deck to swing over level 4 or lower units that are active, and then afterwards you still get to breach through the enemy's base and shield. By linking it together, you make that Wing Gundam 7 AP and 7 HP, which is a massive unit that is not easy to get rid of. Eventually, you'll start hard dropping Wing Zero to wipe out boards and attack with that massive unit by itself because it has high maneuver to play around any blockers naturally. Furthermore, this boss unit isn't easy to remove as it has 7 health, where it requires the opponent to commit multiple units or cards just to trade against it. For a deck that ramps up resource cards, it does require slightly bit more time compared to most other decks in order to get there. And that is where this deck is most vulnerable against aggro and rush strategies before it's able to reach those levels. But that is where the other half of the color being white comes in to fill in the gaps and the weaknesses to provide a defense with blockers. This includes the Wart, Lefrith, Strike Gundam, the Kira package, as well as Striker Pack, which is the command card that lets you play out blocker token units to establish your defense as early as you can. And that is exactly what you want to do in the first couple of turns, is to establish them and slow down your opponent's tempo. Meanwhile, you rack up resources and get ready for the big guns later on. Eventually, when you play out the high level units, you are near unstoppable. Part of that game plan is to make your opponents exhaust their cards first, and then eventually when you go for the comeback play, they won't have enough to deal with your big bodies as you continue to swing into their shields and base, and that is exactly how you win. One of the most fun things about the Gundam card game right now is that the meta is constantly evolving week after week as players are coming up with new cool ideas to build their decks. So let me know in the comments down below on what other decks you guys feel are competitive for the GD01 format. If you want to learn more about each and every single deck that I covered in today's video, make sure to check out the description box down below to check out all the video guides on how to build and also play them as well. If you want to support me and the channel even further, make sure to grab the first assembly collection on the AVAULT store right now, which has all the essential TCG accessories that you need to get started. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day. great night wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing out.